Listen to them, the children of the night. What sweet music they make. One vampire, two vampires, three. Mina, you are in the closet. Schedule? Hey bookworms, happy Halloween and welcome back to another retro review. What better time than now to talk about one of the most famous, successful novels in history, Dracula. This has so many movies and TV adaptation, inspired numerous of books and songs, and countless of other works in different medias, and is deeply embedded in our pop culture. But in this video, I will try to stick to the original, to give you a review of the real original Dracula by Bram Stoker and try to differentiate between Dracula and pretty much everything that came later. Dracula was written in 1897, as I said, by Bram Stoker. This book is written in the epistolary format, which means it's all written through letters, diaries, etc. Think about it as the 19th century novel version of the found footage film. It starts with a London solicitor called Jonathan Harker who travels all the way to Transylvania to meet with a man called Count Dracula, a charming yet strange man who wants to buy property in London. Harker soon finds out that he's a prisoner in Dracula's castle, while Count Dracula himself sets sails to England, where he starts wreaking havoc, drinking people's blood, etc. The story is being told from different points of view. First we have Harker, who tries to escape Castle Dracula. Then we have his fiancée, Mina, whose best friend Lucy is bitten by Dracula and starts losing blood. We have Dr. Seward, who is in love with Lucy and tries to help and save her. And of course, maybe the most famous character is Dr. Abraham Van Helsing, who is a friend of Dr. Seward, who is called by him to try and help Lucy and save her. This gang, including two other suitors of Lucy, Arthur and Quincy, try together to solve this mystery of Lucy's strange illness, and after realizing they are dealing with a supernatural being, a vampire, they try to find a way to stop him. So let's get into the review. This book is brilliant. Look, I know I've said it before when I talked about other famous classics, but there is a very good reason why this book is still so famous after all these years. And if you're still wondering if it still holds up today, if modern audience will be still able to enjoy it even though it's been more than 100 years, my answer is yes. But first thing is important for me to point out, even though it will be obvious to most of you, but this is a grown-up book. This is not for children or really young people. I'm saying it because even kids today know who Dracula is, and he and Frankenstein's monster and others are staples in our pop culture and sometimes are parodied in children-friendly things like Scooby-Doo. It's all good and well, but Dracula is definitely not children-friendly. It's way too dark, way too complex, not to mention that, let's face it, children will be bored to death by it. And if you're still thinking, okay, this is so obvious, why is she pointing that out? Tell that to the grandfather who wanted to buy this book to his 9-year-old grandson when I was working at a bookshop. And he did not believe me when I told him this book was not suitable for children. And it was only when he actually held the book up and saw that it was, written in very small print and, it wasn't a children's book, when he realized that, hey, maybe I shouldn't give that to a child. No, don't listen to me. I just work here. Like, why would I try to convince people not to buy books, right? Anyway, secondly, this book was written in the 19th century, in a different time and in a different culture. I feel that some modern readers might find 19th century, Victorian books sometimes a little slow and boring. I'm not saying don't read it, it's bad. I'm just saying that before reading it, before getting into it, you have to understand that times were different. People had a lot broader attention span and just wrote differently. It is especially noticeable in epistolary novels like this one. Victorian books are seldom short and to the point. They would just write about everything, including what they ate for breakfast, what clothing everybody wore, and how people looked. and they will write about it in great detail. And unlike today's books, in Victorian novels, not every single thing is actually directly related or important to the plot. I'm not saying they're bad, I'm just saying that's how they're written. But going back to the book, it's captivating regardless of the long descriptions. It's kind of set up like a murder mystery, you know? Lucy starts losing blood, they don't know what's causing it, they're piecing the information together until they realize they're facing a vampire and then chase him. This never gets old. Also, I like the fact that this book has a little bit of humor. Would it still work today? That's really depends on your sense of humor, but there were some points where I literally laughed out loud. Another great thing that unfortunately I never seen any of the other Dracula adaptations out there is just how kick-ass Mina is. You want a strong female character in the patriarchal Victorian world? There she is. She is so brave, so strong, and so incredibly smart. She takes it upon herself to do the research for the gang to see what they are dealing with, and without her, all the strong, brave men would be lost. It's such a shame that when Mina does appear or mentioned in any of the numerous Dracula adaptations out there, she's either a damsel in distress or a femme fatale, Dracula's mistress or something. But before I talk more about how Mina is or isn't Dracula's lover, I do want to conclude that if you're looking into reading a classic, Dracula is a must. It's clever, witty, creepy as hell, interesting, and its place on the classic shelf is definitely well earned. Don't be deterred from some slow pacing in the beginning or some long descriptions. There's enough scares there and action in this book. Now I do want to get a little bit into things that aren't in the book but people believe in. As I said, Dracula, have seen so many different resurrections, I suppose, no pun intended. There are so many different adaptations and versions out there. So let's get into some cool misconceptions regarding the original Dracula. The biggest one, I suppose, is romance or the lack of it. Even before the atrocious Twilight, there were still many books that presented some sort of a forbidden Romeo and Juliet love affair between a human and non-human. This does not appear in Dracula. It's important for me to point out, Dracula and Mina were not lovers. He was not in love with her. She was definitely faithful to her fiance and then husband, Jonathan Harker. And just reading how Dracula forced her to drink his blood, that deserves a trigger warning. Dracula wasn't some charming, misunderstood, lonely character. He was evil. He was nice to Harker at the beginning because he needed him, but make no mistake, Dracula was evil. Also in the original book, there was no actual connection between Count Dracula and Vlad Tepes, aka Vlad the Impaler, the 15th century leader that pretty much everybody associated with Dracula. There's still some debate, and obviously I don't know all the details, but even though Count Dracula was definitely inspired by Vlad Tepes, there is actually no ancestral relation between them. Then, of course, there are the symptoms of being a vampire. So in Bram Stoker's Dracula, Dracula has no reflection, he has a bad reaction to both garlic and crucifix, can turn into various animals. Am I forgetting something? Oh, right. In Dracula's world, vampires have absolutely no problem walking around in sunlight. They aren't in their full power, but they aren't burned or anything. It's a fun fact that one of the most famous things that people know about vampires is something that never appeared in Dracula, the most famous vampire novel ever. And here's another fun fact since I'm here. A lot of people think that Dracula was actually the first vampire novel. This is actually not true. If you want to know which one was the first novel, watch my video about the top 10 misconceptions about book. I will link it down below and also above me right here, so check it out. So let's conclude. go read Dracula. What are you waiting for? Look, I already said in this video how great I think it is. I don't want to just repeat myself all the time, but you know, it definitely stands the test of time, and it's just a really good book. So before I go to take a nap in my coffin, I have 2 questions for you. Number 1, if you have one, what's your favorite classic horror novel? By the way, if you haven't read anything by Shirley Jackson yet, maybe it's time you began. You already know what my answer for this question is. I just spent a while raving about Dracula in this book. And question number 2, what's your favorite version of Dracula, whether it still has the same name or by any other incarnation, whether it's serious or funny? I think my favorite is the Mel Brooks parody Dracula Dead and Loving It. And that is it for my video, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed my video. If you did, don't forget to click like and show it, to share this video to the world, and don't forget also to subscribe to my channel. If you dare. You know, I should stop doing that. Every time I try to do it, scary just comes up as pathetic and weird. Anyway, guys, have a happy Halloween, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.